You're listening to The Grind, well-caffeinated conversations with disc golfers who are passionate about improving their games and helping others to do the same. Welcome to episode 12 of The Grind, a disc golf podcast. I'm Josiah. With me, my good friend David. We're going to talk some disc golf.
How's it going, guys?
This week, we've got a pro tip from Luke Humphries. We're going to talk about focus, which is kind of relevant for me. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. And we're going to review the Prodigy A3. But first, David, what are you sipping on, and how was your disc golf week?
Dude, sipping on some tasty Colombia today. It's from the El Tambo region in Colombia. This is kind of a fun one. It's actually unique in the sense that it's a woman-owned farm. This is actually part of a collective in Colombia called Amaca. It started out in 1999 with 80 women in the region, and it's actually up to 140 women smallholders in the region now.
That's cool.
Yeah. So it's super cool. There's definitely been a trend in the industry with kind of creating the demand with woman-owned farms, with kind of celebrating, traditionally the men, similar to our American culture, men kind of bringing home the bacon, but kind of a culture shift with a lot of the women partaking in coffee growing, which is super rad in the industry. So it's fun. It's a fun cup, kind of a classic cup, tasting a lot of nutty, earthy, nothing complex. It's one that I would enjoy drinking. I can grab every single day and feel like I'll never really get bored of it, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those coffees that some of the language that we use is it's not really offensive to anyone. I feel like the majority of people that would sip on it would be like, this is a good cup.
Yeah, so we had a Colombia early in the podcast, the Grind roast from Birdie Fuel. And this is just a little bit lighter roast. Mm-hmm. Obviously, probably a different farm. But I think it's very similar cup besides the roast. You know, when you have a lighter roast, you're less likely to taste as much of the, well, once again, roast profile as a medium to a dark roast. So you taste a little bit more of the bean. But with a Colombia and something a little bit, I don't know if neutral or balanced is the right term, but I don't know. I feel like this, once again, is very approachable. And I think it would be a good one for someone getting into a light roast because it is a single origin light roast. It is a fairly balanced cup, nothing too exciting, but also some really good flavor.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely a good introductory coffee to the craft coffee industry. Man, round this week. I rested most of the week after the tournament.
The tournament is part of the week.
Yeah, the tournament's part of the week. We had a tournament on Sunday, 2 rounds in the tournament.
And our favorite course.
It was super fun. Josiah and I, we both had some good rounds. I mean, some ups and downs, but
we placed well.
We placed well, yeah. I ended up shooting -7 through 2 rounds. The first round was crazy windy, got -1, and second round was very nice out and shot -6.
Yeah, great rounds great -1 for the conditions, 20 to 30. We were talking about on the second cup, our Patreon bonus podcast, but -1's sick in that weather, and then -6 was your best ever on the course.
Yep.
In a little less wind. Yep. So
yeah, my best before was -5, so I was pretty pumped.
Dude, it's so awesome that you perform some of your best rounds in tournament. I'm jealous of that. We'll talk about it later.
For sure. So both 960 rated, ended up finishing tied for third place.
One stroke back from the leader.
One backstroke from the leader. I had a chance of winning and let it slip just after I took the lead.
No, it's
but super fun.
Sick tournament result and fun tournament overall with some friends placing well. Our buddy Ryan Wilking won Open. Shout out to Ryan. And Micah got third intermediate. Our buddy Sean took second in rec. So we had friends in the top 3 in all the non-age protected male divisions. So
yeah, super fun, man.
Yeah, and then you just rested from this the rest of the week, got 1 round in or 2 rounds in?
I ended up playing, dude, I played 3 rounds yesterday.
What? Well, no wonder you're tired.
Yeah. Kind of 3 rounds because I played 12 holes at Watson with John.
Oh, okay.
Then I ended up playing a backhand and a forehand round at Snooks.
Well, no wonder you felt tired at the end.
So yeah, I thought
you were soft.
Yeah, I was texting Josiah, telling him that, man, my arm feels dead, dude. I mean, that's definitely probably why.
You didn't give the full context. I was like, that seems weird. You're usually good for at least a full round backhand and forehand.
Yeah, for sure. It was a good week overall, man. Enjoyed being able to. I like to have at least 2 to 3 days off after a tournament, not playing. I wouldn't even putt. I just like not thinking about disc golf for a couple of days just to kind of give my brain the rest before jumping back in. I think it helps me keep a more sustainable lifestyle with disc golf. If I feel like I'm constantly on the gas pedal, then I've noticed myself at times feel a little bit more burnt out. So try to protect myself from that. But,
no, I get that for sure. So. I think it must be tough for the pros to go like finish the tournament on a Sunday and then drive either that night or the next morning and then go to practice for the next tournament. Yeah. Like regardless of how you place, whether you had a great tournament, bad tournament, average tournament, that seems tough, the every weekend thing. Yeah. Like every other, I think, seems like it could be sustainable, but the every weekend thing is tough.
Yeah, I feel like that would be pretty hard to keep up.
Yeah, but I mean, good for them.
How was your week, man?
Dude, it was a good week overall. I talked about it a lot on the second cup, but strange tournament. In the wind, I didn't perform well at all. I was on third card of probably 5 cards in intermediate after the first round. Shot a really up and down round. Didn't feel bad about my game. I made a lot of birdies, but I made a ton of over par strokes. I was also dealing with a bit of a stomach bug. I didn't realize at the time. I just thought I was really nervous. But I was like, seems excessive. Like, I don't know why my stomach is cramping up so much. And we won't get into the other details of it. But I was like, oh, this is weird. But I performed much better the second round. Still not incredible, but end up tied for the lead at the end. A opportunity to win it on a 45-foot putt around some trees and almost cashed it. And then went to playoff, which was fun. Played the guy who ended up winning the playoff. Spoiler alert. Was super nice guy. I honestly...
Nice, Josiah.
Yeah, I know. He was super nice. And in some ways, I was excited for him, even though I wanted to beat him. Just had some bad drives, good putts in the playoff, went 2 holes. Didn't quite close it out, but it was a fun tournament overall. I think if I had been feeling a bit better physically, I think I would have been able to fully enjoy it a little bit more. I didn't realize I had a stomach bug, but then the next 4 days, I don't know, were pretty rough. I was laid up in bed. This was on Sunday. I guess it was 3 days. I tried to go to work on Monday and just couldn't do it. So I ended up sleeping all day Monday. Didn't really do any disc golf because really just besides the tournament, because just been letting my body recover. Did a little bit of putting, and I don't know. I do feel like it's nice to have a few days off after a tournament, but I also was just, I don't know why. After the tournament, I still didn't understand I had a stomach bug. I was just like, man, I don't know why I'm so tired. I feel exhausted after 2 rounds and 2 bonus holes, to be fair. So yeah, it was a good week, up and down week overall, and had my in-laws in town at the same time, so didn't get much practice in before the tournament. Kind of a strange week, but a good week. I was excited to place well after a really bad round and come back from third card to have a chance at winning, but I also felt like my overall performance, even in the second round until the end, when I stacked up some birdies to take that tie for the lead, still just didn't feel quite where I wanted it to be. And we'll catch that in later on in the podcast. I'm going to maybe get David to explain to me how to be better at disc golf in tournament. But yeah, decent week.
Nice, man.
You want to get into a pro tip?
Let's do it, man.
So Luke Humphries, Prodigy Pro, who's been killing it on tour this year, I asked him, what's one thing you wish you knew when you were first building your game? And he said, I wish I knew that the only thing that matters is putting. Do that till you're the best putter you know, and then work on other stuff. And I like this. We talked about putting in the very first episode, and rolling through episode 12, I think it's nice to kind of revisit it because it's such a huge part of the game. And I think that we were talking about in the second cup, but I think it is something that completely, if it's there, if the putting is there, you're going to be fine. Even if you don't drive or upshot well, you're still going to be fine. You may not win, but you're going to be fine. And if it's not there, you have no chance. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, as far as between intermediate and advanced, I would say that's about 80% of the difference between those two fields. Is advanced, is their putting is going to be a lot more consistent, and typically intermediate. I know earlier on, putting was not something that I cared about practicing at all because I was so concerned about getting distance with my drives and landing somewhere by the basket that I neglected putting entirely. And that's something that definitely held me back at the beginning. Yeah, but I think this is something that really separates, especially even from, I mean, I think consistent circle one putting is something that separates from intermediate to advanced. I mean, being able to have consistent putting within circle 2 and I mean, basically 100% within circle 1 as far as the difference between advanced to pro. I mean, obviously, yeah, there's some distance there as far as how far your arm can pump it. But I mean, we've seen guys in intermediate pump it 450 feet.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And still it comes down to their putting, just not cashing the putts.
Yeah, I think that circle 1 putting is almost like insurance. Like if you said, hey, you don't really know if your drives or upshots are going to be together today, but you're going to nail, you're going to be 90% C1X, which is basically what it was first tournament this year when I won. I was 88%, but we'll round it up. In intermediate, you're almost guaranteed to be in the top 2.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
If you make your C1 X putts, even if you have a bad day on the drives and upshots, as long as you can halfway hold it together, you're going to be fine. That's a lot of pressure to put in your putting, but realistically, you're going to be fine. And we talked a bit about, hey, upshots can sometimes be the most important thing, but in some ways that is to take pressure off your putting game. Mm-hmm. If you can get your upshot to 10 feet, you never have to putt.
Yep.
Or at least in the 30-mile-an-hour wind, the first round of this past tournament, 10 feet felt like a very long putt. We had a guy on our card who went from 10 feet to 45 feet on his putt because the wind just took it away. But yeah, so I do think that there is something about it that is like, it's foundational to good scoring, obviously. And I think it protects other parts of your game. And I think, a lot of it comes down to confidence. And that's some of the hardest thing about it is, backhand form, a lot of it you can get down to the mechanics. And I think there's some important mechanics about putting. We talked about in the first episode about being straight in line with the basket and that sort of thing. But so much of about it is focus and confidence.
Yeah, for sure. I think back to, even just a year ago when it came to if I landed my upshot or my drive within 30 feet, I was walking up to my putter or my drive to putt, thinking like, oh man, now I have to make a big putt. If it was outside of 10 feet, I was kind of stressing to make a putt. I have to make a putt.
Your putt was also the least confident trajectory you could possibly have.
It was this little floater, like really terrified of going past the basket.
You put it so high and so slow, which is a good strategy if you don't want to make a putt, but you don't want to have to putt again. But I feel like one of the big differences in your game since then is that more straight line putt, not a spin putt and not an aggressive putt that goes way too far if you miss, but a confident trajectory.
Yeah. I can say now, that's the difference for me as far as my skill level goes within the tournament. I feel like I walk up to my disc. If I know I'm in the circle, I feel really good about making a putt. I know I'm going to miss a putt every once in a while. That's just part of it. But I know I have a higher percentage to make the putt than I do a percentage to miss the putt. And so I feel like walking up to my disc gives me a lot of confidence. I don't really think about my putting because I feel I'm putting enough work in at home with my basket to feel good walking up to it. And again, you're still going to miss. I miss all the time. But having the confidence to know that more than likely I'm going to make it in the basket. Even if you make 60% of your putts, that's a higher percentage than missing. So you should have the confidence of knowing more than 1 out of 2 shots is going to go in, and that's got to feel good.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I think that in the end, it's sometimes you need to work on developing that stroke, and you need to develop those mechanics that work well for you. But I honestly think a lot of times you can have varying mechanics and have consistent success on the putting green if you in your head are confident about the putt.
Yeah.
I feel like the reason that I had a chance to come back and almost win the tournament this past weekend was that during that round, I couldn't not see the chain link I was aimed at. Mm-hmm. Like it was tunnel vision, the chain link, and I didn't even think, there's no thought about putting form. There's no thought about nose angle on the putt. There's no thought about wing angle. There's no thought about anything else besides this putt's going in. Mm-hmm. I had a 30-footer that ended up being what I needed to be tied for first, the hole before the last hole, which I missed the 45-footer. But anyway, and I was kind of just like, this is going in. There's no like working it up to it. I was like, I'm making the 30-footer. Like it's happening. And it was perfect. Like it was never going to miss. There was no chance of it. And I think that's sometimes so hard to develop though. And when you're off when your putting game is off, it's so hard to get back on. It's so hard to build that confidence back. And if you've never had that confidence, it's hard to even imagine having that confidence. But I think you can get to that by having confidence at some distance. Saying, you know what? I make all my 10-footers. I am as good as any pro at my 10-footers or my 8-footers, 6-footers, whatever it needs to be. And then you kind of build that confidence circle for yourself of, hey, I nail 12-footers. 12-footers don't stand a chance. Mine right now, I feel like in tournament, I feel really good inside 20. 20 feet, I feel like I'm not going to miss this. I mean, maybe in some crazy wind like we had the other day, I may have missed a 20-footer. But in general, I feel like not going to miss a 20-footer. It's not going to happen. And then, at like 25 to 30 feet, it starts to be a little bit more of, I'm probably going to make this. But I think building that confidence by practicing short putts, to me, is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just a matter of not having to think about it when you walk up. Because if you're thinking about your putt, trying to make it, that puts doubt into your mind, and doubt definitely is going to impact your score, impact your game.
Yeah, I think there's some balance between just walking up and putting and getting yourself in the right mental place. And I think a lot of times people who are confident in their putt walk up and make the putt. But I think it also maybe teaches the wrong thing for people who are feeling not confident, because you can rush yourself. Like what happens to me often is my putt looks confident because I walked up and I putted fast. My whole motion was fast, and so it looked confident. Whether it went in or not, a lot of times it's not confident because I didn't actually take the time to, I'm not thinking, I'm trying not to think, but I'm being slow about my pre-shot routine and slow about my mechanics, and then confident about the putt. And I think that's, for me, what I've been noticing, and I think it's really helped my putting in round, and especially in tournament, is don't take forever to figure it out. Like, no offense, Nico, but don't be a Nico. But at the same time, don't feel rushed. Like, find your pace and then be consistent about that pace.
Yeah, I agree.
I asked Luke because he's made a huge jump this year on the Pro Tour, and I've heard that he didn't really practice putting before this year.
Oh,
and
wow.
this past off season is when he really started practice putting, and you can see a huge difference for him. And I asked him, how'd you build your putting game? And I loved his answer. I loved it. It said, the disc has to fly. So Luke Humphries. Start close. Confidence is key. I'd forgotten about the start close thing when we talked about starting close. But yeah, start close. But I just love the disc has to fly. It's not this super complex technical answer. It's just put the disc in the basket.
Yeah, I like that.
I feel like sometimes if you give someone who's never putted, my mother-in-law was putting on my basket this weekend. It's super fun to watch. If you just give somebody a putter and say like, hey, here's a 15, 20 footer, they're going to make quite a few of them just for fun, because your body knows how to throw something. And even my mother-in-law, who hasn't putted much before, can make a 15 footer, an 18 footer, a 20 footer, maybe not at a 90% clip, but she can make some. And sometimes when your putting game is bad, you can't. And it's because your body knows how to do it. Even if you haven't practiced a ton, your body can figure it out. You're good. You're going to be decent at it. And so much of it is just putting the disc in the basket. Forget mechanics, forget the situation, forget the wind. Just do the thing.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to that confidence. I mean, your mother-in-law walking up, if she makes it, it's really not that big of a deal if she makes it or misses it. And so the stress or the mental thought that's put into it really isn't near as much as somebody that's going up and trying to make it consistently. So I think, there's something to say of being able to walk up, whether it is confidence, whether it's not putting so much pressure on yourself. All those things are going to impact you on the putting green for sure.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think when I'm successful at putting, and this is somewhat of a repeat of earlier, but when I'm successful at putting, it is completely thoughtless and free. And I think that being able to do that in tournament is sometimes tough. And maybe you're not playing a tournament, maybe you got a chance at personal best, or maybe your putting's fallen off and you're trying to pick it back up. I think it's hard to get there, but I think that the solution is not to try harder or to like change up your routine and technique or anything. You might have to do that in order to get your brain out of the space it's in. And I sometimes do that, especially on the practice green. But in general, it's like I am going to focus on the chain link that I'm aiming at or whatever your aiming tool is. And then I'm just going to commit and I'm going to start short. Like Luke was saying, and we were saying earlier, we were like basically pros. And I'm just going to say, hey, I'm going to make some putts.
Yeah, I think when I'm at my best with putting, I am focused so hard on visualizing my putt typically comes in at a hyzer from the right side with putting right-handed, and I'm visualizing that hyzer slamming into the chains on the right side. So much so that when I miss that point and I hit low and it just barely catches in the basket and I still make the putt, I mentally tell myself, well, you got away with one because it definitely is not what I meant to do. I think oftentimes, you land that perfect hyzer and then it bounces out of the basket. And so kind of telling myself that my goal isn't necessarily to make the putt. My goal is to hit that same spot every single time.
Yeah, that's good.
So, yeah.
I totally agree. And I actually think that's one thing that I do use, especially in tournament, but in round when I don't feel confident, is to imagine that disc coming in.
Yeah.
Before I putt, like especially if I'm in especially for me, odd footing or an odd situation where you can't do your normal swing or whatever, I just imagine that putt going in and try to visualize that specific angle and line. I think that's huge. I didn't thought about that for this podcast, but I think that's huge.
Yeah.
One thing I want to talk about, we're talking about focusing on a link, but I want to talk about focus as a general concept for performance in disc golf. And I think this is something that was really lacking my first round. Not every hole, but on some key situations that end up giving me some pretty rough holes, especially that first round, but both rounds. How do you focus? How do you maintain focus in round?
That's difficult because I think in general, depending on the round, there's different things that I might put my energy towards. Because you think the first round, typically wind is something that really throws off my focus because I get so worried about how stressful it is to putt in the wind, how hard it is to get your disc to land where you want it to land for whether it's your drive or your upshot. Because in theory, it's much more difficult. I think for me in the wind, the one thing that finally changed my focus was the only thing that I thought about going up was, okay, what's the best way to release? What's the best disc to use? And what's the best way for me to release the disc in order for me to get the disc to do what I want it to do? And so I wasn't thinking necessarily about the wind specifically at all. I was just thinking about what disc that I wanted to do and how I wanted to release it. And I think that simplified it in my mind. So I wasn't overwhelmed with what the wind was going to do to my disc. I was simply picking my disc based off how I wanted to throw it. And so it almost was simplifying the game back to, back to the basics.
In some ways, maybe the fact that you were thinking about the mechanics of the game made you not think about the overall, like, hey, I'm in a tournament or whatever. You're just like, hey, I want to.
Yep.
You're focusing on the strategy. Interesting.
And that was some of the wildest wins that we've ever played in, and I am notorious for falling apart in wind. So I think this was a huge transition for my focus as far as in the wind goes.
One thing I noticed I was doing in round was I'd be focused on my target at first in the run up or backswing or whatever it was, especially for drives and upshots. And then thoughts would just creep into my head. Like, I don't know, not even thoughts like, oh, what happens if I hit this tree or whatever, just like distractions. And I realized that this is true of me in life in general. And maybe disc golf is a good teacher of learning to buckle down and focus in the moment, in the microseconds you have in the moment. But I just noticed my thoughts wandering from that target. How do you keep yourself in that brief time between doing your pre-shot routine to executing the throw from wandering away from that target or that plan?
I mean, I would say that those thoughts creep into my head as well.
Dang it, David, you're supposed to give me the silver bullet.
Not all the time, but I would say still, like maybe within that 50 to 30% of the time, those thoughts creep into my head, especially on a tree hole. You have that initial thought, but I think I've trained myself to, for the most part, not always, shut that down immediately as far as recognize that I'm having the thought, but also recognize at the same time that just because this thought is there doesn't mean that's the outcome.
So I like the recognition part. That's good.
I mean, it's kind of the self-awareness. Like, I know that my weakness sometimes is communication. And so I'm aware that a friend or spouse, whatever it might be, is aware that that's a weakness of mine. And so I think the awareness of it gives you the ability to know I'm not defined by it, and it's something that I'm working on. So I think being able to shut it down of knowing that everybody, I guarantee you, everybody, the pros, everybody, there's those thoughts that pop into your head, even on the putting green, wherever it might be. But being able to shut it down, knowing that the thought's there, but that doesn't mean that's the outcome. I know that I can hit this shot. And so, yeah, especially on those tree holes, so often the things easily pop into my head, but you've seen the outcome over and over and over again because we played the course multiple times. And so I know more than likely I have a shot at birdie, and that's all I'm concerned about. If I don't get that shot at birdie, I know I'm going to get the par. And so it doesn't stress me out to not get the birdie.
Recognizing and accepting that distraction. When you said that, I was like, oh, that would be so helpful to do. Because usually I'm trying to push it aside so hard that I'm distracted by the effort of trying to remove the distraction. And I think maybe that to me is a little bit of something I'm going to ponder, because I think that may be huge in terms of, hey, I've picked my target. I'm ready to start my walk up, my X step, whatever it is. And now my mind is wandering. Okay, I'm going to stop for a second. I'm going to accept that I'm distracted, and I'm going to refocus, and then I'm going to execute, and being willing to stop, or being willing to in my head say, I'm distracted. That's fine. Mm-hmm. Whether it is a distraction of, hey, there's that really tight gap I need to hit, and I'm worried I'm going to hit this tree, or whether that is a distraction of, hey, I really need to birdie this in order to take the lead, or whatever that is. I think that recognition is probably, for me, is going to be a big takeaway.
Yeah. I mean, I think especially, what's the long backhand hole again? The 375 backhand tunnel
13.
Shot? Hole 13. So that's the hole that I stepped up to after I found out that I was tied for first place. And I was the one that I was teeing off first. And the lead card was behind us, watching us drive.
Oh, man, that is some pressure.
Yeah, so the pressure was definitely on. And that's a hole that Josiah knows that I have overthunk so much to the point to where I used to hit the first trees every time.
It's not a tight gap. It's maybe 20 feet, 15 feet.
Yeah.
It's not a tight gap off the tee.
Now I walk up, I focus on my shoulder on that, keeping my shoulder down, because I know if I keep my shoulder down, I can pull straight through that tunnel and not have to think about the drive. So that's all I focus on. And
interesting. So you actually think about the mechanics.
I'm thinking about the mechanics on that. Yeah. And I think I definitely had in my head that, do not hit the first tree, because everybody here will be very excited if you hit the first tree, because you're in first place right now. And so that thought was definitely there.
But you didn't hit the first tree.
Yeah. I babied it a little bit more than I wanted to, because I wanted to make sure to hit the gap and just take the par, because that's a birdie that maybe 5% of the field's going to get, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, in advance, I'd say that's probably true.
So I wasn't concerned about getting the birdie. Yeah, I mean, the thought was there. I was nervous about missing the gap, but at the same time, I knew that if I went through my motions and focused on keeping my shoulder down, I knew I can hit the gap.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I try to never think about mechanics off the tee.
Oh.
But it's probably better to think about mechanics than the first available tree.
Everybody hoping you to hit the first tree.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody would get a kick out of that.
Yeah. It's funny in those moments, because you know that everybody inside is kind of like, oh, cool. But then at the same time, like, oh, sorry, man.
It's hard when you are that tight to want your competition to do well or not celebrate a little bit inside when they don't.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no, I definitely like that. I don't think I'm going to try to focus on my mechanics. I think that's dumb. No, I'm just kidding. But I don't think for me it will work. But I do think the idea of going back to acknowledging the distraction, and then I think to refocus on that target. For me, that aiming point, that visual cue. I know for me, for putting, that was definitely where it needed to be second round, especially at the end. That real focus there, and never had much need to fight through distractions, but I'm excited to try that. And I think it's good in life as well. Like, hey, I feel this thing, whether it's I'm distracted or anxious or whatever, and just, yes, I feel anxious. Yes, I feel distracted. Yes, I feel angry.
That's one thing that, man, I mean, it's so relatable to life. Like you said, I went through a season after college of feeling so depressed because I felt like I needed to live up to some sort of standard that our society had given me in order to, whether I'm making enough money, whatever it might have been, to give me this image that I was successful. And so I spent so much time being depressed and dealing with a ton of anxiety. And once I realized and accepted the fact that all of us humans deal with this same anxiety, what on different, obviously different levels, different experiences, whatever is being pressured, pushed on us. Once I accepted that and realized that, suddenly I didn't mind it anymore because I'm like, oh, now when those thoughts creep into my head, my first thought is like, oh, I mean, I'm not the only one that experiences this. I don't have to be down on myself for this. Yeah, it sucks, but that's part of being human. And I think that's part of being a disc golf player is that those negative thoughts are going to creep in, and that's okay, but that doesn't mean it's going to be the outcome.
Yeah, no, that's good. I definitely feel like probably in life I need to do a better job of taking that second, whether it's on the course or off it, and just acknowledging how I'm feeling. And maybe part of it is that I am, I think someone who experiences feelings. I'm not totally shut off, but I do think sometimes in order to try to control that, I try to deny it. And I think maybe having more acceptance would be helpful for me.
I have a lot of emotions, so I have had to figure out some sort of way to maintain a healthy mental lifestyle.
Yeah, well, I'm just a cold-hearted person. Anyway, you want to get into a disc review?
Let's do it.
Time for the What Was That disc review. We've got the Prodigy A3, which is a 4-speed, 4-glide, 0-turn, 3-fade approach disc. I'm not going to call it a mid-range, but it's kind of a mid-range. I have thrown the A3 a lot, but you haven't. What do you think about it?
Are they the same number as the Zone across the board?
I think I'll have to look it up. I think the Zone may be 4303.
Okay, that makes sense. I was telling Josiah, this disc it makes me feel a little bit more like a 5-speed is what I would have guessed. I didn't look at the numbers before.
It has a 5-speed width rim for sure.
Yeah. That definitely was able to get it out a little bit further than I've talked about throwing my Zone. It's definitely has some similarities to it. I could definitely get a little bit more distance out of it, and I feel like it's gliding a little bit more. I would actually say that it has a little bit more stability than the Zone. It seems to fight back harder for me, especially, I'm not sure what the plastic is of your A3.
Okay, so you had a 300, which is their beautiful base plastic to check out. A 400, which is kind of the mid-grade, and then the 750, which is their most premium plastic.
The 750 definitely had a lot of, it was fighting hard back for me, which I really liked. I actually did a Spikeiser backhand on hole 6 in that shorty position with it.
At Snooks?
At Watson.
Oh, at Watson.
Yeah.
Hole 6.
It's in the shorty right now. Yeah. And I parked it. It was perfect. I really liked it, man. Definitely a very predictable disc. I've talked before. I definitely rely a lot on overstable discs, and this fits into that category. Yeah, I mean, it reminds me a lot of the Zone. If I didn't have this long-term committed relationship to the Zone, I think I would immediately jump into considering it more so as far as a deep relationship with it. But I can tell you, man, I loved it as a disc.
What did you think about it compared to the Gator we reviewed last week?
Gator's definitely more overstable. Gator was a meat hook for me.
Dumps out much
Just
sooner.
Dumps out.
Less glide, you think?
This has more glide than the A3, I'd say. Has. Yeah, A3 definitely has more glide. Again, going to the Gator was more of a utility disc for me. Like, I wouldn't necessarily see it as an approach disc. I mean, maybe in a really heavy headwind would I be using that. I mean, that might be one just to have around to put in the bag when you're playing in super heavy winds. I actually hadn't thought about that, but that could be fun. Yeah, this definitely I would put more in line towards the comparability of the Zone, but a little bit more of an overstable Zone.
Yeah, I feel like the A3 and Gator 3 have similar feels. They're both flat topped.
Yeah.
They have a little bit bigger rim maybe than the Zone, but beaded. I should say the A3 is flat topped. You can find A3s more consistently flat topped these days. I think that early on there was a lot of variation. I've definitely seen some crazy domey A3s, but the ones that I have found and enjoy, you can get them with a pretty board flat top. I agree. The hand feels good. That bead feels really good backhand, and it feels fine forehand to me. I don't think I have any negatives towards it. I do think it's glider than the zone. I do think it can go further than the zone. I think it has more fade than the zone, but I think once again, I think the zone has maybe more high speed stability, and then the A3 has a little bit more low speed stability. I think it's hard because we have so many different plastics to choose from. You don't really know what the basic standard one is. The 750 that you threw is probably on the most overstable side, and the 300's on the least stable side. But I threw A3s in zones the other day when we were reviewing the zone back to back, a bunch of them. And I'd say A3 went a little further, had a little bit more fade, but the zone maybe had a little bit more high speed stability to me.
Yeah.
But it feels good.
One thing I would say that the A3 definitely has over the zone is that hand feel for the backhand. We've talked before. I mean, we did a review on the zone, and the backhand for me on the zone, every great once in a while I'll use it for maybe a short chip shot, but I'm never going for a long upshot with the zone on a backhand. I just like it so much on a forehand, but not the backhand. But the A3 feels good on both. I feel like I have a good grip on it with my forehand and on my backhand. It just feels really good in the hand. It feels, I would say it even feels more comfortable in my backhand than the Buzz does.
I probably would agree with you. I think that's one of the things that sold me on the A3 early on was that feel on the backhand. And being a backhand dominant player, I feel like I liked the zone, but I usually wanted a couple plastics of it, and then having those in the bag when you didn't throw them backhand felt like a little strange. I also thought it made a better overstable Buzz complement. It doesn't go quite as far as the Buzz for me, but the zone feels like a step down in terms of speed and distance, and a significant step down than the Buzz for me. And the A3 feels somewhat comparable. I think the big thing I enjoyed about it was that I could get it to go straight for a while in the less overstable plastics, and then have this very consistent finish. And I feel like it made me feel very consistent with placement shots on the backhand especially, but on the forehand as well.
Yeah, for sure. I get that.
So with the flight numbers, I'd say 4403. I totally agree with that. The 3, I think it depends on which plastic you have. I'd say that 300 plastic, that one's particularly got a little bit of beaten into it. It's probably a 2. And the 750 may even be a 3.5. But I think in general, I do think it's got a 4-speed. It may be a 5-speed. It's a smaller diameter like the zone than a Buzz, but it does have it's a little faster. But that 4 to 5 speed, totally agree with that. 4 glide, yeah, maybe not quite as much glide as the Buzz, but certainly more glide than the zone. Yeah, so I think the flight numbers are pretty accurate. I think that it's a great disc for control, in that for me, that 200 to 250, 275 range, if I'm really pushing it. And like it backhand, like it forehand. I like it for flat shots that fade out. I like it for little turnover shots that come back to flat. I'd like it for spike hyzers and control hyzers. I think it is that very reliable disc. It's not going to be for distance, but it's a reliable disc.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Well, you ready to get into a rating?
Let's do it.
All right. So our rating system, 1 to 5, some to David, my scores to 10. 1 is it's just not that great of a disc. 2 is it's a fine disc, but there's definitely better options out there. 3 is it's a good disc, but it just doesn't stand out. 4 is it's not going in my bag, but it's fantastic. And 5 is it's going in my bag. So David, what's your review?
Dude, I'd give it a 4. I think it's a fantastic disc. I think if I didn't have such a love relationship with my zone, I'd consider it a little bit more.
There's definitely some overlap there. It'd be hard to bag both.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, great disc. Love the hand feel. Love everything about it. Just, I feel like emotionally for me, would not consider putting any more time and energy into it, just because I don't want to have to make a decision.
Yeah. Well, that's what messed me up is I heard good things about the A3 and got one and loved the feel. And then the first 3 throws on it, I birdied it. And I was like, all right, zone, I guess we're going to have to deal with this. And I liked it backhand. And since I'm a backhand dominant player, traditionally it went in my bag pretty quickly, kicked the zone out. I'm not going to give it a 5, though. I'm going to give it a 4.5. It's not currently in my bag. And this podcast is giving me problems because I really like the Pyro. The Pyro is a little faster than this. It's a little bit of a straight to harder fade than this, but holds straight longer so I can get more distance out of it. And I really wanted the Pyro in my bag because I was really liking that disc for that overstable mid slot, but then the A3 felt like overlap. And the one thing that I really missed about the Zone that I think the A3 didn't give me was with my Berg, I throw this really nice baby Annie that flattens out at the end. And so I get this approach shot that lands so flat that there's no chance of roll away or big skip or anything else. And the A3, I never felt like I could quite, even with the least stable one, get it to hold that Annie for a while and then come back to flat. It wanted to dump at the end. And that's it's a minor shot, but I use it so much with the Berg, and the Zone was my next step up, especially the Jawbreaker Zone. And so I missed that shot and I kind of missed the Zone. And so I was like, I got to decide between the Pyro and the A3, but if I put the Pyro in, I can probably keep the Zone, or I put the Zone in because they don't quite overlap. And so I was doing these mental games. Anyway, long story short, the Zone's back in my bag, at least for now. The A3 is out, but I love the A3. And I think if you don't love the hand feel of the Zone, or you're a backhand dominant player, I think it may be the best faster approach disc, that 4 to 5 speed range that I've felt. And I think the flight is great. You can get it in a lot of different plastics, and Prodigy's plastic is just so nice. It's got good grip, good tack. You can get the 300 is like a little bit chalky and feels great, good stiffness, but still has good grip. The 400 that we have is got a little bit more flex to it, and then the 750 is nice and stiff, but still got some tack and grip. So Prodigy's plastic is great, and this is probably my favorite disc in their lineup, so you should definitely check it out. So that is a 8.5 out of 10, so a great score and a great disc. And if you want to support Luke Humphries, you can buy yourself a Tour Series A3. He had the A4 last year, but this year he has the A3, and I think it's probably a better disc. Go and buy one, support Luke, support the goodest boy, Hogan, the puppy dog, and enjoy some really reliable shots with some beautiful plastic. David, you don't know about this, but I thought it'd be fun to give away a bag of coffee to one of our patrons. We have a new patron, Jonathan, who joined and is supporting the show, and so huge thank you to you. If you want to become a patron, you can look us up at patreon.com/thegrinddg and support the show. You'll get access to a mini bonus episode every week. And huge thanks to Jonathan for supporting the show. I thought it'd be fun to give away a bag of Birdie Fuel's The Grind to one of our patrons. And so, David, I'm going to get you to pick a number between 1 and 9.
Oh, let's go with 7. That's my number.
All right. So number 7 is Chuck White. So Chuck, congrats, man. We're going to send you a bag of coffee. I'll reach out to you for your address. You are a patron of the Grind, so it makes sense that you be drinking the Grind. So thank you so much to all of our patrons, and thank you to Jonathan. You know what's great? When AMs help AMs.
Yep.
And Zach, one of our patrons, sent us a tip.
Hey, David and Josiah, this is Zach, and if I had to think of one thing that I wish I could go back and tell myself when I was starting out in disc golf, and particularly with the backhand throw, it would be to get my elbow higher. It's something I've struggled with for a long time, and it's one of these things where even when I thought, okay, I need to get my elbow up higher, even when I felt like I was intentionally trying to do it, then when I would take video, it still wouldn't actually be where I intended it to be, if that makes sense. So it's the sort of thing where try to get it high, and then when you think you have it high enough, you're probably halfway. So get it even higher. I found that ideally I want my elbow to be basically straight out from my shoulder, when I'm in the power pocket, and it tends to sag down. So it's, more like kind of 45 degrees down, toward my chest more rather than straight out at 90, if that makes sense. And I've found that getting it up so that I've just got that straight angle out from my chest, it gives me more room to get the disc into the power pocket, and stay away from my chest. And then also it allows the elbow to just hinge straight open to release, rather than when I let it sag down and it gets down low. In order to open outward for the throw, it's sort of more of like a rotational move of the elbow. You can kind of feel that if you just put your arm down at, sort of in a power pocket position, but down at 45 degrees or so, and then try to open it out like the release of a throw, your elbow sort of turns rather than just hinging, if that makes sense. So yeah, that would be the number one thing I would tell myself if I could travel in time back to when I was starting in the game. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Zach, so much for sending in his suggestion there. I really think that sometimes it's a bit hard over audio to fully get into a mechanics recommendation, but I do think this is really helpful to me. I think it's easy when you drop that elbow to lose a ton of power on the throw and a lot of accuracy. And when he sent this tip, it actually was really helpful to me because I realized that I was applying it but hadn't actually put words to it. And the reason for that is hole 7 at Watson. So hole 7 has this huge log right in front of the tee pad. Like it's probably 3.5 feet, 4 feet high. It's at a point that if you throw with your normal release and you get that trajectory down at all, you're going to hit it, especially on the backhand, and leave yourself with no putt. Leave yourself with a crazy tough scramble. It's OB both ways, water one way, sidewalk the other. And in its long position, it's like 350, 360. And on the backhand, you have to throw like a baby Annie the whole way, or flip something up and have it hold straight that whole way to not go out of bounds. And so what I had been doing was I had been lifting that elbow and that arm, actually fixing my posture in some ways, not hunching over or hunkering over. I didn't realize I was doing that. But when I did that, I was throwing like 70% power, and I went long twice in a row on that hole. And I realized that once Zach sent this tip in, that's what I had been correcting. And I had started already to apply it to other holes, being like, hey, if I just keep my posture up nice and straight and I keep that elbow up the whole way through the throw so that I'm basically keeping that power pocket at 90 degrees and I'm not letting that elbow droop, I'm getting a lot more effortless distance. And I'm also not hitting the log straight in front of me and giving myself a 350-foot upshot to try to say par, or maybe being OB and having a 350-foot upshot to maybe not get more than a bogey. So it's been helpful for me. I know you haven't messed with this, but what do you think about Zach's suggestion?
Dude, that's something interesting to me because, yeah, it's not something that I've really thought about in my mechanics, but it makes a lot of sense because I think back to, two things. I can relate this to baseball specifically. Keeping your elbow, basically you're trying to get your hands to the ball as quick as possible. And disc golf, you're trying to pull through that power pocket. It's with this quick fluid motion through the power pocket. And really it comes down to your elbow is what's leading. You're drawing that line with your elbow. And so definitely relatable to baseball. I've noticed that for me, every once in a while when I'm going for a backhand spike hyzer, I'll accidentally not spike it and I'll accidentally just throw it straight. And I end up bombing the disc really far.
Do you sometimes almost hit your chest when you're doing that?
Yes. And I think a big part of that is because I am having, when I'm doing that, I have my elbow more up when I'm trying to get that pull through and get that spike hyzer. And I'm wondering if that is something that might play into every once in a while me pushing that 400 mark. If that's something that I'm doing, not realizing it.
I think that the elbow up, obviously it allows you to have the power. Like if you have that elbow collapsed, you're going to lose so much power. You can just feel it if you mess with it.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing it does is in some ways it corrects a lot of the rest of my posture. And I think when that elbow is collapsed, I find myself leaning forward with sorry, I'm demonstrating to David right here. You guys cannot see, but I end up leaning forward and I think that actually like corrects a lot of things. And it may be, I don't know, maybe the posture corrects the elbow corrects the posture, but I have noticed improvements. And I do think it prevents me from trying to throw with my shoulder so much. I don't know. I think it's super helpful, Zach, and I really appreciate you sending it in.
Yeah, I'd absolutely agree. It helps correct your posture. Just the small thing thinking about it can make a huge adjustment.
One of the things he said at the end, which goes back to what we were talking about last week, was making an overcorrection a week before last. I can't remember. Making an overcorrection to your form in order to actually get to the place you want to be.
Yep.
And I think with the elbow, you can do the same thing. You can raise it up to where it almost feels awkward in order to teach your body a new pull through line. I think to me, it's something I want to keep messing with and keep working on, because I have been throwing, I don't know if it's only related to this, but I've been throwing further with less effort lately than I have in a while, maybe ever. And I'm pretty excited about it. And I think feeling that balanced, neutral posture and being a little bit more upright while still having my lower body active, I think is making a big difference.
For sure.
So huge thanks to Zach. Once again, I feel like it kind of solidified some things that were already going on in my head and in my form. And it's nice to have just such a relevant tip. If you want to be part of the podcast, help us and our listeners out, you can send us your suggestion. This could be a form tip like Zach just sent out. This could be a mental game or strategy idea. This could be a disc that really helped change your game. Send it to us at thegrind.dg@gmail.com. You can just use the record app on your phone. We'd love to hear from you. And we like getting better at disc golf, and we'll take any help we can get.
For sure.
Cool. Well, that's this week's podcast. Thank you so much for listening. We will catch you next week. And don't forget, whether it's coffee or disc golf, to enjoy the grind.